Clash of the Champions 22 Part 2. We're going to be continuing our review of that show. So, let's launch straight into it. And we left off with Brad Armstrong and Chris Benoit, and we're going to go straight into Tony Schiavone introducing us to a video package featuring the reunited Rock and Roll Express and introducing... Did you watch this? It was just the oddest thing to dump in the middle of a show. Introducing Smoky Mountain Wrestling and a working agreement to have Rock and Roll to come to WCW for the Super Bowl 3 pay-per-view. Then an extended look at the Rock and Roll... Extended was... if that's the word. Look at Rock and Roll Express and the Heavenly Bodies. So, what a weird thing to put on. It looked like VHS footage, basically, that had been sent in from Smoky Mountain.
Yeah, sort of like the fan cam later in ECW. There were a couple of things that stuck out to me. First of all, have always been a huge fan of Tom Pritchard's work, Dr. Tom Pritchard, right? And the long-haired Tom, that's the Tom that's in my memory banks, just really, really good in the ring. And again, watch his timing in that. But I got to ask, what the hell did Stan Lane have on his head? It looked like a jockstrap.
There's a story behind that. Would you like to know?
Yes, I'm dying.
He had sort of almost like a box. No, it's like an amateur wrestling headgear, because apparently the story goes he had recently been fitted with some sort of wig. He thought he was losing his hair, so he ended up having a wig installed. And I think the way that Cornette says it, that it was sewn into his scalp.
What the hell? Yeah, that's crazy, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, I saw that. I don't remember Stan having of course, after a few minutes, I realized it's like an amateur headgear, and I'm like, what? It just looks so out of place. But one of the things I want to point out in this match is, first of all, it was you see how rock and roll could command an audience, right? And the little tricky ways they would go into and out of spots. But watch Stan and Tom's the Heavenly Bodies. Watch Stan Lane and Tom Pritchard's positioning. They're everywhere they need to be, and that's when you hear the phrase "ring generalship," that's really what it's referring to. Both of them are so pro that they're pitching themselves to the rock and roll to make the rock and roll good, and the rock and roll's doing a great job enough on their own to make themselves look good. They know what to do, but when you put that kind of just perfect ingredients into the ring, you can see how just effortless they make it look. And it really does look like they're just having fun. They're just in the ring doing this and doing that, and boy, it's just everything is ending up exactly where it needs to be. And they make it look easy. That ain't easy to do. If you have one person out of the four not going going along, it can make it really difficult. But to me, like that, like you said, the footage was a bit rawer than say like what we were already watching on the Clash. But because of the ECW fan cam, that never really turned me off. It was sort of like, hey, we're getting a cool look at something else. And I'm guessing at this point, Smoky Mountain must have been trying to forge a relationship with WCW. That'd be the only reason they would show that. And but I do have a question, because I asked Moose right at the end of it. Who was the person that walked out right at the very end before the clip cuts off in green tights?
Do I have to find it and have a look? Because I didn't notice it.
Yeah, I thought you might know off the top of your head. They come out to the ring and they turn sideways, and at the last second they turn, you can see a bit of their face before it cuts off and goes back to the Clash. In that split second, it looked a little bit like Jack Victory to me, but
it wasn't Brian Lee. It wasn't Brian Lee with the long blonde hair, was it?
No, had short hair. Short, like blondish, reddish hair.
Okay, this is going to bug me. I'm just going to find out one sec. All right, Shane and I both watched it, and neither of us can figure out who it is. So that's sort of like a dead duck in the water kind of topic to go through. Rock and Roll coming back in 1993, as you say, rightly so. Smoky Mountain and Bill Watts enter a very brief working relationship, which ends pretty much when Bill Watts disappears and then Eric takes over.
Yeah.
Do you remember In fact, I'm going to skip out that question and say, was there any chance of you ever going to Smoky Mountain Wrestling?
Jim Cornette had called me, and the recollection on this is so vivid. I remember I was taking a bath, And he had called me and we talked at length. He offered me a spot to come in, and it was right after Eddie Gilbert had called. And if you recall, I'd mentioned that Eddie would do these like 5 or 6 calls, kept, sweetening that he and Todd would call and up the money a little bit, and this and that. And then he finally offered as the lead heel position, which I wanted to, again, like I said earlier, wanted to learn all the aspects of my, business, my craft before I'd gotten out. And so it was like, as much as I liked Jim and, really would have liked to gone there and work with the people that they had there, I'd already sort of settled in my mind, if I'm going anywhere, at that moment in time, my mind was, I'm not going anywhere. I mean, I'm out of the business and I'm going to stick over here and do this. And, but if I were to go somewhere, it would probably be with Eddie, because he'd given my original break in the business. That was nothing against Jim, nothing against Smoky Mountain. It just was more affinity and respect for Eddie Gilbert, which we would later find out wouldn't be there for long anyway. But yeah, there was an offer made. As I recall, though, there was no discussion of what the spot would be, what the character would be. It was just that one call, and nothing ever. Obviously, nothing came of it. But yeah, he had contacted me about going in there, and it was right on the heels of after Eddie and Todd had called, and I ended up going to ECW, obviously, but it was we were, where I was in Pittsburgh, we weren't getting a lot of information about Smoky Mountain. I mean, you were aware there was another promotion out there, but like, weren't sure of, is it a bigger promotion, a smaller promotion? It seemed to me at the time to be an extension of Ron Fuller's Northern Continental. And, it's, again, it was nothing good, bad, or ugly about Smoky Mountain Jim or Ron Fuller. It was, I had made this in my mind idea that if I'm going to go anywhere back, it would be ECW, Eastern Championship Wrestling, because of Eddie and Todd. But my mindset at the time was, I'm not going back to the business. I was like the alcoholic staying proverbially out of the bar. I didn't want to be around it and then get sucked back into it. And so I think that's part of the reason why I kept taking the repeated phone calls from Todd and Paul was I was trying to Todd and Eddie. I know it didn't sound right. I was trying to find the right place to say, appreciate it, just not interested. And instead they fooled me by, keep sweetening the pot. And then, Eddie had come up with this, lead heel position. And that was just enough to get me to take the automatic, now I'm staying out of the business, and question mark over my head. Interesting. What could this be? And honestly, we thought, I think part of the equation for me was like Terry had asked me on that first trip in, we both got picked up at the same time. And he asked, well, Shano, how long do you think we'll ride this train before it runs off the tracks? And we joked about it in the vehicle going back to the hotel. We figured 2-3 months they'd be out of business anyway, right? ECW. So, I think it was just looking for a way to keep them on the line long enough to like give them a no and have them accept the no and not call back again. But in that meantime, Eddie figured out the one thing that could get the alcoholic to go back into the bar. So yeah, but there was a connection made with Jim, and nothing ever came of it. There was no formal offer of, okay, mid-card spot, a top spot, this character, that character. It was just, hey, we're doing this new thing. Would be something you're interested in, blah, 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 that kind of thing. It was, very, very esoteric.